Hello, gamers. Today I'm going to be going through about a round and a half, maybe a bit more, a little less, of Warhammer 10th edition for you guys. So when we next meet, which will be on the 13th, excluding you, Nick, sorry about that, I won't have to go over the rules again. You can watch this in the future if you ever need a review on it. But today I will be doing a combat patrol match between my two armies. I'll be playing Leagues of Votann and Adeptus Mechanicus into each other. Whenever I'm rolling for the Adeptus Mechanicus, I will be using these white dice, and for Leagues of Votann, these black dice. Additionally, I'll be using the most updated rule set for both factions. And the game itself, which slightly deviates from Combat Patrol, as in the most recent balanced data slate, which was about a week and a half ago. There were a couple of changes to a couple of core stratagems and some huge changes to the AdMech army that I really want to play with, so I don't care that they're technically not the correct rules. I'm going to quickly show you guys both armies I'm going to be playing today, and then we can start. So, the first army that I'm going to be playing today, don't look at that, are these Votanns. These are the ones I've played with in the past. You've got your Hernkin Pioneers here. There you go, those three. You've got our Call. You've got our Hearthkin Warriors. And our Chthonian Berserks. The second army I'm going to be playing with today are the Adeptus Mechanicus, as we can see here. We've got the lighting's not the best, neither is the camera quality, but we've got our Tech Priest Engine Seer right there. We've got our Skitarii Rangers. We've got our Kataphron Destroyers. These two have plasma weapons, and this guy has a grav cannon, and then we have our Onager Dunecrawler with the Icarus Ray and Daedalus rockets. Today we're going to be playing Clash of Patrols, which means we have long edge deployment. As you can see, works out. Yeah, you can see our two long edges of those nice colored dice. So, the first thing you do when ready to field, after of course you and your opponent have both agreed on what to do, is rolling for who is attacker and who is defender. The first thing you do is roll for attacker and defender. So as I said, AdMech are using white dice, Votann are using black. Whoever rolls higher gets to choose if they're attacker or defender. That means defender gets to choose which side they're on, but they also deploy the first unit. So let's see. So Votann roll the higher number, thus they get to decide whether they're attacker or defender. They decide they're going to play defender, and they are going to be playing on this close edge. And throughout this, I'll be putting up displays on the screen for you guys, so you don't need to flip back and forth between a rule book. So, the Votann are also, you need to declare which units are going to be attached to which. So, the Votann are declaring that their Call will be attached to their Hearthkin Warrior unit, which I only have one of the guys. Don't want to grab all 10. And the Adeptus Mechanicus player is saying that they are going to attach their Engine Seer to their Skitarii Rangers. So, the Votann go first. They are going to deploy their Hernkin Pioneers right here. I'll bring you guys over in just a second. Yeah, right there. Then it goes to the Adeptus Mechanicus player, and they are going to deploy their Cataphren destroyers. I'll show you guys. Right there. Move that out of the way. Okay. It's back to the Votan, and they are going to deploy their Chthonian Berserks. My camera mount is pretty much right where they're sitting. So yeah, that's where they are. And I'll give you guys a nice overview of the battle once we start. And you alternate sides until everyone's out of units to deploy. So that means the Admech player is going to deploy once again, and they are going to deploy their Skari Rangers and Tech Priest Engineer. They have their Skari Rangers right there. The next person to deploy is the Leagues of Votan player, and they are going to deploy their Hearthkin Warriors. They are positioned right here. Sorry about the wire. Okay, now it is left for the Adeptus Mechanicus player to deploy their final unit. Oh, I forgot their call. It's up to the Adeptus Mechanicus player to deploy their final unit. They will deploy their Honor Dragoon Crawler right here. Both players need to declare, technically you should have done this before, but declare which due to how Combat Patrol works, you need to declare your war gear on your leader in addition to your secondary objective, using the Feed the Void war gear, or enhancement it's called, which gives them reroll 1s on their Hearthguard unit, and they're using Toils Earned, which means they get to select an objective that's not in their deployment zone, and if they hold it, they score an additional 4 victory points in addition to the 5 they would score on their turn. The Admech player are using Holy Apparatus, which means if their Engine Seer and their Honor Doom Crawler are alive and healthy at the end of the game, they'll score additional points. And the Engine Seer is using Omniballistic Data Tether, which means that they can reroll 1 hit roll, 1 wound roll. Now, we go on to nice big aerial view of the battlefield. And I will use this throughout the video to show and demonstrate deployment zones and such. It's a little scuffed since I literally just have a camera attached to a thingy-mabobber. So yes, the first step of determining who goes first. And as I said, it is whoever rolls the higher number goes first, no matter what, not who. It's not the person who rolls higher gets to choose, does not get to choose whether they go first. The person who rolls higher goes first, the person who rolls lower goes second. Remember, Admech's white, Votan is black. Thus, Votan are going first this game. So, we move to the first command phase. Now it is the first combat round. One thing that we're technically supposed to do before we determined who goes first was make any scout moves. And both sides have them. Actually, no. Maybe. I don't know actually how you determine order now with that change, but we'll just pretend like that change isn't in effect because I don't have the brain strength to figure it out myself. The Hearthkin Pioneers and the Skari Rangers both have a scout move of some form or another. The Hearthkin Pioneers, which are the bikes in the back, have a scout move of 9 inches. So they're going to make that right now. Additionally, they have the fly keyword, so they can pass over top of terrain, such as ruins, which are these. I'll mark those. I'll have them mark those for you guys. So they will move. Give me a second. They will move 9 inches to here, so they will be in range of that objective so they can start holding it soon. 9 inches, we'll move them roughly right here. It also gives them a pretty okay line of sight on the AdMech unit. Rangers. The next scout move we need to make is for those Rangers. Seeing that the where did my tape measure go? There it is. Seeing that the Hernkin Pioneers made that, they're going to move so they're closer into the terrain so that they can be better and have full cover from them. And they only have one of 6 inches, but this is, I didn't measure it because getting within the ruin is definitely under 6 inches of distance. So now it is the Leagues of Votan turn 1. And the first, they only have one thing that they do in their command phase, which is Grim Efficiency, which is the ability of the call to place a judgment token, which I didn't show you guys. Here's what one judgment token looks like. Or that, I suppose. And that's if the call has line of sight on any units, which, if we can go back here, line of sight isn't the easiest to represent like this, but due to how the call was placed, and since they aren't in the ruin, they don't have any line of sight on anything, though their priority target for future ones will probably be the Onager Dunecrawler. So that is all they do in their command phase. It is now their turn 1. So they decide to make, it's been their turn 1 already, so they make their first move. The first step after the command phase is the movement phase. Also, they declare this objective to be their one for toils earned. So if they hold that, they will score extra victory points, starting from their second turn onwards. So the first thing that we do is their movement. So they say they are going to move their Chthonian Berserks, which are these guys, a little hard to see because of the angles. Their movement, which is 5 inches. They want to make sure these guys, since they're so slow, and they won't, and since they're also going first, there's no easy turn 1 charges. So they are just going to move into this area to help to capture that objective, so they score a bajillion or 9 victory points once the at the start of their second command phase. Ooh. Okay, then they decide they're going to move these guys so I can stop knocking them over with the thing. But yeah, it's still not a bad idea to move them. Since Leagues of Votan units, their main crippling weaknesses are they're really strong and really tough, but they're slow and their weapons are usually quite short-ranged. They also only have 5 inches of movement. So they are going to move 5 inches, so they are wholly within this ruin, so they will gain benefit of cover, but they will also be able to shoot out if they want to overwatch, and I think some of their weapons will have sufficient range to affect some of the Also, I'm going to remove these dice. They're not needed anymore. There we go. And see, for future turns, assuming the Onager Dunecrawler stays in a relatively similar area. Yeah, you can see the Onager Dunecrawler here and the call there. There is line of sight between the two, assuming it stays in a relatively similar position. That will allow the call to place a judgment token on them, allowing for increased DPS, as the kids say. The next movement and final movement for the Votan this turn will be their pioneers. They're one of Votan's fastest, if not their fastest unit, and they have 12 inches of movement, which will get them in a great place to try to pick off these destroyers. So yeah, they can either try to capture this objective or try to get the jump on the destroyers. And they are going to try to outflank these goons and get a good angle on these guys. Additionally, I will have a visual on the side of the screen for you guys. Both players will have gained 1 victory point, or not victory point, command point at the start of this turn. The AdMech player has decided to use it on Fire Overwatch, which means that they decided to use it on Fire Overwatch, so they can try to attack the bikes before they can get any real damage off. We now move over to the battle cam. When initiating the fight, additionally, the AdMech player is in Defender Doctrina. I can't remember what the actual name is. It's Conqueror and Bulwark, perhaps? Protector. I lied. I'm a horrible, horrible liar. So, this will subtract 1 command point. When firing Overwatch, you fire just like it was your shooting phase, except you only hit on a 6 instead of the normal other numbers. So, we will now move on to the hit roll for the grav cannons of the Cataphrone destroyers, which there's only 1. For the grav cannon, it gets 4 shots. And I'll put these up on screen for you so you guys can see them well. If any of these are a 6, it hits. If, despite them having a ballistic skill now of 3, because they're in Protector, they will only hit on They will only hit on 6s because they are firing Overwatch. So let's see how it goes down. And that's 1-6. We now move on to the wound roll, which I'll put up the chart. You compare the enemy's strength, or the enemy's toughness, to your weapon's strength, and apply any anti-keywords that happen. The grav cannon has anti-vehicle, but the bikes aren't vehicles, they're mounted, as that's kind of the role they fill. The bikes have toughness 6, and the heavy grav cannon is strength 6, meaning that it will wound on a 4. And that's not a 4. Too bad, so sad. We move on to the next weapon, which will be the 2 Cognis Flamers. These are torrent weapons, which means they ignore the hit roll, so that means they're great in Overwatch. This is to roll to see how many wounds go through. 5, so I will be rolling 10 dice, and these will only wound on a 5 since they're strength 4 into the Votan unit's toughness 6. So only 5s will go through, and I can only see 2 5s out of the lot. Now we move on to the armor save, which the Hernkin Pioneers have a save of 4 up. So if they roll a 4, 5, or a 6, they save these. And that's a 6, a save, and a 1, which is a fail. That means the Hernkin Pioneer, one of them, swing back around, one of them will take 1 wound, leaving it on 2 wounds remaining. We now move back to the Phosphor Blaster, the single one that they have. They are within rapid fire range, which is half range. So it will get 2 shots and 0 hit. So we will get 8 shots because there's 2 of them. And let's see what happens. 6 is a hit in this scenario. And I see 2 6s. we then move on to the wound step. And when overcharged, plasma culverins have a strength of 8. So that means they're wounding on 3s. That's one failed wound, but one wound that goes through. They have AP -3 when overcharged, and with the Hernkin Pioneers save of 4+, meaning they are unable to save, this means they take an immediate 2 damage, which we swing back over again, kills this bike. Bleh. So I'll just set that off to the side. And we will see how... And now we need to make 2 hazardous rolls. And if either of these were a 1, they would have taken 3 mortal wounds. And since they only have 3 wounds, it would have destroyed one of the models. Now we move on to the next step, which is the shooting phase. Because after the AdMech player finished their Overwatch, it was still the Votan's movement phase, so now we move on to the shooting phase for the Votan player. Now let us see what shooting things that they can make. Currently, they are able to shoot with their... Let's actually check if they can. So, the Votan player can shoot with this unit into the Onager Dunecrawler. Maybe. I think they can at least with one of their weapons. Can I see both of them? There we go. You can just see the tail end of both of them. Boom and boom. As you can see, some weapons will be in range, but not all of them. The weapons that they will be able to fire will be... They will be able to fire their high-las auto rifle, as well as the Call's Volkite disintegrator. So, we now move... Okay, they are going to fire their Call's Volkite disintegrator into the Onager Dunecrawler. 3 hits, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Okay, 3 hits. They will now wound on... If I'm reading this right, a 6. But if they wound on this 6, because yeah, it's toughness 10, a strength 5 weapon shooting into a toughness 10 vehicle. But on that 6, they will actually ignore the armor roll, and it will immediately deal damage. So, they're... and that's nothing. Now, we move on to the high-las rifle of the... high-las auto rifle, I should say, of the Hearthkin Warriors. It gets 3 shots, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s. Oh, all hit. Okay, strength 6. Toughness 10, so they will be wounding on 5s. Wow, he's rolling hot. And then it has a 2-up save, and it being the Onager Dunecrawler, and the Hearthkin Warrior has a high-las auto rifle has AP -1, so they will be wounding on the Onager Dunecrawler will be saving on a 3. 1 save, so 2 damage goes through. It now has 9 wounds remaining. So we will down from 11 wounds. Let's use my fancy magic dice. Actually, yeah, it doesn't have... We just dealt damage, so it only has 9 wounds. Hope you guys can see that. The next set of shooting that we move on to is the Chthonian Berserk's shooting, which they have a very slight amount. There they are. They shoot on... their weapon has indirect, which means that they can, even though they have 0 line of sight to their target, which is going to be these Skitarii Rangers, they will be able to still hit them, but it will have a -1 to hit. So, go back to the dice tray. They are going to shoot, their weapon profile says they shoot D6, which, so did the Cataphron Destroyers, but I didn't go over it then, so I'll go over it now, which means you roll a dice, and that will determine how many shots it gets. So 3. We now roll 3 dice. Now this is the ballistic skill check. They will they'll hit on a 4-up. 3-up, 5-up, I mean, because they're using indirect fire. So 1 hits. We now compare the weapon's strength, which is 5, to the toughness of the Skitari, which, if I recall correctly, is 3 even. Wow, they're kind of weaklings. So they will be wounding on a 3 with this 1 hit. And that wounds. The next thing is the save. The mole grenade launcher has... Oh, I also forgot to account for blast. They should have rolled 2 more extra shots, but I forgot about that. So let's actually see. What have they gotten? 2 more shots with 5s? Yeah. So they get 2 shots go... Actually, let's see if that other one wounded. The other one did wound, so now the Skitari have a save 4-up, and the mole grenade launcher has a AP of -1, meaning they would need to roll a 5. But because the Onager Dunecrawler, they are within 6 inches of the Onager Dunecrawler, as we can see right here, they have a 4-up invuln save, meaning that they will save this on a 4. And both are saved, meaning that shooting does 0 damage. Now we move on to the final step of the Votan's shooting phase, which is these Hearthkin warrior, Hearthkin pioneers. Man, they all sound way too similar. Hearthkin pioneers, Hearthkin, are going to shoot into the Cataphron Destroyers. These guys just overwatched them, so they're angry. They want to avenge their friend. Move back to the dice tray. So, the Hearthkin Pioneers are going to shoot at them with their guns. Here they are. They're going to shoot into the destroyers with first their 2 bolt shotguns. And hitting on 4s, no rerolls, so they get 2 hits. Then we compare the bolt shotgun's strength, which is 5, to the Cataphron Destroyer's toughness, which is 6. So this means they'll be wounding on 5s. 1 wound. Yeah, you can see that. Now we move on to the save. Cataphron Destroyers have a 3-up save, and the bolt shotgun has AP of 0, so the saving on a 3. They don't save, so that means one of them, which I'll say the one guy... Nope, they get a +1 to save because they are in cover. Because it's kind of hard to see, but this wall is in line, so they would get +1 to their save. So no damage befalls the Cataphron Destroyers from their bolt shotguns, but that's not the scary attack. So now we get onto the scary attacks. So we now move on to the high-las rotary cannon, which has 6 shots and has sustained hits 1, which means upon the hit roll of a 6, they gain 1 extra shot. So let's see how many shots go through. Hitting on 4s once again. No rerolls. So 2 6s, which means 2 hits extra will hit, even though these ones couldn't have. They didn't. So 4 shots go through. Strength 6 into toughness 6, meaning they're wounding on 4s. 1 wound. They have AP -1, and the Cataphron Destroyers have a save of 3, but they have cover, so those cancel out. So the Cataphron Destroyers will be saving this on a 3. Ooh, that does not save. Meaning that one of the Cataphrone destroyers, we swing back over, will have 2 wounds remaining. Because yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the guy who's got the grav gun. So we're moving back. Now we move on to their final attack, which is with their Magnacoil autocannon. They have 2 of them, 1 on each biker, so they'll get 6 shots total, hitting on 4s once again. 3 hits. They don't have any effects that give them extra cool bonuses. So now those weapons have strength 7, and the Cataphrons have toughness 6, so they will be wounding on a 3. No rerolls, no nothing, so 1 wound goes through. This has AP -1, and so it counteracts again, so the Cataphron will be saving on a 3 once again. And that's a save. Very uneventful shooting phase for the Votan. Now we move on to the charge phase, which the only charge that they could make would be the Hernkin Pioneers into the Cataphron destroyers, which they don't particularly want to make, as neither of them are very good in melee. And the only melee unit either side has would be the Chthonian Berserks, which you can't see from this angle. The Chthonian Berserks. Okay, here we go. The Chthonian Berserks. But the only charge that they could theoretically make would be into either the Onager Dunecrawler or into the Skitarii Rangers. Which, it looks like if they rolled a 12, they could get to the Skitarii Rangers, but they couldn't get to the Vanguard, to the Onager. So, we're going to try. So, back to the dice tray. We're going to make the charge roll for the Chthonian Berserks. And that's only a 9. That's a pretty good roll, but not nearly enough. So, that is the end of the Votan player's first turn. We now move on to the Admech player's turn. So the first thing that they do in their command phase is both sides gain 1 command point. That's the first thing that happens. Then the Engine Seer is going to heal the big guy, is going to heal the Onager Dunecrawler. Also, they're saying they're going to be in Protector Protocol again. Heals the Onager Dunecrawler, I think it's D3 wounds, and gives it a 5-up Feel No Pain, since it is a vehicle. So, let's see how many wounds it restores. 3 wounds, which makes the Onager Dunecrawler go back up to full. So, we now move on to our movement phase. Okay, so yeah, we are moving on to the Admech player's shooting phase. Despite what their data sheet says, all of their weapons have heavy now. So if they can, they're going to want to stay still. So they can hit on like 2s, which is kind of wacky. Admech player is going to move their Onager Dunecrawler. They're quickly going to make some range measurements. They're within range of all of those weapons. And then they're going to check the ranges of the other units they have to get them nicely in range. These guys nicely in range, because their shooting's not bad, but it's definitely not the best. So they are going to move their 6 inches and stay within 5 inches of the objective so that they can score it. And try to get as many guys within range of, in line of sight of the Votan. And previously, despite healing 3 wounds, obviously they have a max health limit. You can't heal to 12 wounds because they only have 11, and only 2 were removed. That should be a. And neither of the other things are wanting to move. As in, like, the destroyers over here, as they have a very pressing threat of the Hernkin Pioneers, which if they rolled better could have definitely killed them real good, but they didn't. And then the only thing that they can shoot, because both sides hid their units quite well, is the AdMech can shoot stuff into the Votan. So that's exactly what they're going to do, because that was the end of the movement phase. We now move on to the shooting phase. So the AdMech player is going to check line of sight on their models to see which ones can actually see. So it looks like the arc rifle, the transuranic arquebus, everyone except these three, which includes their plasma culverin, will be able to shoot, though the Votan definitely receive the benefits of cover. That also includes the tech priest, which I don't even think has the range to shoot. I think the pistol he has only has 18, only 12 inches, rough. So, first thing we're going to do is fire the transuranic arquebus. These guys, despite everyone else this shooting phase on the AdMech side, will only be hitting on 3s because they moved this turn, right? All the other AdMech models stayed stationary. The first thing we are going to do is be shooting the transuranic arquebus, which, how many wounds does the call have? 4, so you can kill him either way. And it has the precision keyword, meaning it can target things with the the player who's attacking gets to choose which model it hits, and I'm choosing it's going to try to hit the model in the Votan unit that gives them their 6-up feel no pain, because that's annoying. So we roll, it's 1 shot. That hits. Now, the Votan have a toughness of 5, and this weapon has a strength of 7, meaning it wounds on a 3. That's a 1. But the Tech Priest Engine Sears thingy lets me reroll 1 hit and shoot. Lets me, out of all my attacks, reroll 1 hit roll and 1 wound roll. I'm spending its 1 wound roll reroll right here, or that there is. And that's a 5, meaning that wound goes through. This weapon has an AP of -2, but they will get a +1 to their save, so that means that they will be saving on a 5. Oh, that's a 1, so that means they don't save. But let us see how many damage the transuranic arquebus does. 1 damage. But at this point, they still have their 6-up feel no pain. So they will get to, if this is a 6, they will ignore that 1 wound and that guy lives. That's a 4, that does not. The guy who has the medic pack, which I am deciding, I didn't make one specifically to have a medic pack. Or did I? Oh, yep, here he is. Medic pack. He is now bleh. He's DED. So now they no longer get that 6-up feel no pain. We now move on to the rest of the shooting. We will now shoot with the arc rifle, which has 1 shot, rapid fire 1, if they're within half range, which they're not. I don't think they are, at least. They are just barely outside our rapid fire range, so no extra shot. So we now see if this hits. This will hit on a 3. That's a hit. It is strength 8, so this will be wounding them on a 3, since their toughness 5. That's a wound. It is AP -1. It's countered, so they will be saving on a 4. It's countered by their cover. The Votan does not save. So 1 more Votan unit is removed. Actually, not that guy. He's got the fancy gun. Just a normal dude with a normal plain weapon. We will now shoot with the plasma culverin. And we're overcharging it because we're gamers, or supercharging it technically, despite it having very little tangible value for lots of risk. But we love risk in this household. So these are hitting on 3s. 1 hit, 1 miss. Which we're going to use our once per turn reroll on this 1 hit roll. That's 2 hits. Strength 8. So wounding on 3s. 2 wounds. AP minus 3. The Votan unit has cover. So they get a +1 to their save, -2. They're saving these on 6s. Ooh, 2 fails. So they now, despite they being 2 damage apiece, due to how damage cutting works in 40k, they only need to remove 2 models from their unit, and they will just remove 2 more regular guys. Not any of their fancy guys. We now move on to the 2... If I did my math... No, slightly more than 2, because they're the 4... Yeah, the 4 galvanic rifles that are able to shoot. These each have 2 shots, so 8 shots total. And hitting on 3s. No rerolls, nothing fancy. So, looks like there's 4 hits out of them. These weapons have a strength of 4 to the Votan's toughness of 5, meaning that they will wound on a 5. Let's see how many wound. That looks like there is 2 wounds. These weapons have an AP of 0, meaning the Votan will be saving on a 3. That is, man, I bet they wish they had that earlier. 2 6s, which means none of those hits go through. We now move on to the next unit that's nearby, which will be the Onager Dune Crawler, which can definitely see that unit. So it's going to shoot its weapons into them. First thing it's going to shoot is its 2 Daedalus missiles. So these are hitting on 2s because it didn't move last turn, and it has that extra 1 to its ballistic skill, or its hit roll. So these are hitting on 2s. Those are 2 hits. We now move on to the strength, the wound roll. This is strength 5, or strength 10, into toughness 5, meaning these will wound on 2s. 2 wounds. These are AP minus 2 into the Votan's save. Into the Votan's, give me a minute. The Votan's save of 4, AP 2, +1 from the cover. They will be saving on a 5. Rough. And then we do the calculate the damage. These are each d6 + 1. So that is 2 and 4 damage apiece. But since of how numbers work in this game, we will just take out 2 more normal guys. That's all the Hernkin Warriors plus the call they've got left. This isn't shaping up too good for the Votan. They should have hit a bit better, maybe. Excuse me. We now move on to the Icarus Array, which they get 6 shots of. This weapon is twin-linked, meaning it rerolls all wounds. There we go. Hitting on 2s once again. So all of these hit. It'd be nice if it had lethal hits or something, but it doesn't. So this is strength 8 into their toughness 5. This means they're wounding on 3s, but rerolling everything. So we'll pick up the ones that didn't wound. Rerolling, so 4 shots go through. This is AP minus 1. They get a +1 because they're in cover. So the Votan are going to be saving on 4s. 2 saves, 2 go through. These are each 2 damage apiece. So we will take out the 2 guys This guy's not normal. He's the... I can't remember the name, but his gun only has 6 inches of range. He was never getting in range to shoot at anything. So, we now do the final shooting of the Onager Dunecrawler, which is its Cognos Heavy Stubber. He gets 3 shots of this. It has rapid fire 3, but they are not within rapid fire range. Hold up, are they? I don't think so. I think I did measure this. Nope, they are just barely out of it. They get 3 shots of this. 2 hits, 1 miss. AP strength 4 going into toughness 5. That means the Votan are saving on 5s, on 3s. I mean, or wound. It's wounding on 5s. Both wound. We now move on to the Votan save. AP -1. AP 0, I mean. They get a +1 to their save, meaning the Votan are saving on 3. 1 save, 1 fail. This is a 1 damage weapon, so they are going to get rid of this guy. So that's all of the shooting for this blob of dudes. Well, we now will move on to this shooting over here of the Cataphren destroyers into the Hernkin Pioneers. Let's see how it goes. So we move on to them. First, we are going to shoot with the 2 Cognos Heavy Flamers. They are a torrent weapon, so we see how many shots they each get. There's 2 of these. 6 shots total. It's strength 4 into toughness, 6? Toughness 6, so these are wounding on 5s. That's a whole lot of wounds. The Hernkin Pioneers have a save of 4+ and cover, so they'll be saving on 3s. And the Cognos Flamers have AP 0, so these will be a save. Man, Votan could be rolling a bit better today. So all 3 go through, which means 1 bike is dead. That's not something I was expecting. 1 bike is dead. Well, I'm taking this one off just to maintain benefit cover, even though it does have the fancy gun. We want to try to... The best chances for Votan to live is for their cover to stay. But based on that being the weaker weapon, I kind of doubt. Yeah, we're going to see the end. We are now going to shoot with the Phosphor Blaster, which, since it is in half range, and it has rapid fire 1, it will get to shoot two dice. Hitting on 2s, no rerolls. That's 2 hits. We move on to the wound roll. It's strength 5 into toughness 6, meaning it wounds on a 5. No wounds. We then move on to the heavy grav cannon, which gets 4 shots. 4 shots. Once again, hitting on 2s. What the? Ain't no way. Hitting on 2s. It's strength 6, so it will wound on 4s into the Hernkin Pioneers. Toughness of 6. That is 1 wound that goes through. This weapon is AP -1. They have +1 to their save. So they save on a 4. That's a save. We then move on to the Plasma Culverins, which they will overcharge because it's funny. They get 8 shots, 4 for each. Hitting on 2s once again. So take out that 1. And this is a strength 8 into toughness 6, meaning wounds on a 3 Ooh, kind of a blowout. Lots of 2s. 2 actually went through. This is AP overcharge. It's AP minus 3 it's AP minus 3 into the Hernkin Pioneers save of 4, but they get a +1 for cover. That means they save on 6s. And that's a save, baby! That means only 2 damage goes through, meaning that final Hernkin Pioneer lives with 1 wound. 1 wound remaining. We now move on to the charge phase, and because the AdMech player knows that the Hernkin Pioneers have an ability which will let them get out of their clutches before the next turn ends, they are going to try to charge the final Hernkin Pioneer with their Cataphren Destroyers. As unadvisable as it may be, it is going to be really funny though. And I need to demonstrate a charge. And unless you guys want me to go through another round and a half. The AdMech player is going to charge. Let's actually check the distance. This looks like a 6-inch charge. So the AdMech player rolls 2 dice. If they get at least a 6, the charge is successful. And then we can move on to our first actual combat round. Or round of melee. So, AdMech. That's a 4. It does not go through. So, and there's no other charges they want to make. So we now move on to our charge phase, failed fight phase. There's nothing in melee combat. So we now move on. It's now the end of turn. The Votan player is going to use the outflanking Mag Rider's ability of the Hernkin Pioneer to take it off the board because it's within this and it's not in engagement range. Take it off the board and put into strategic reserves. This will mean it will be deployable in their movement phase. It'll be deployable in their next movement phase. So they can make the most out of its 1 wound, because it would be dying via Overwatch next turn. We move on to our turn 2. The first thing, it's now the Votan's first turn, and they are now within. They are currently on top of 1. First thing that happens is the Votan player controls 1 thing, so they will score 5 victory points, and both sides also gain 1 command point. And they are... I'm hovering over the one they're not on. That's not the best idea. They are controlling this one, which, if you remember, was the objective that they said would be their target for toils earned. So they score 5 for holding that one. In addition, they score an additional 4 victory points for toils earned. We now move on to their movement phase. So the very final remnants of these guys are going to move the first thing the call is going to do is, now that he has line of sight on the AdMech guy, he's going to apply a judgment token on the Onager Dunecrawler, meaning that they have +1 to hit against it. So they will move 5 inches. That should have been command phase, but I kind of forgot. 5 inches to get behind this ruin. They're not touching it, so they can't be shot, but they are within range to control that objective. The next set of movement that's going to be done is the Chthonian Berserks. which will move 5 inches to there. They are touching it, so they will be able to be shot, but they're planning to charge, so it matters not as much for them. The next and final thing that they're doing in their movement phase is calling in reinforcements. When calling, or not calling in reinforcements, but getting a unit out of reserves, which is the one bike that they had. So they are bringing in their bike that almost died into pretty much the same spot that it can be deployed 6 inches from board edge and not within 9 inches of any enemy. And there's no bad guys in the back. Any battlefield edge 6 inches, not including your opponent's deployment zone. So, and 9 inches horizontally from any enemy models. There is no bad guys in this area, so they will go right here. So they are able to capture that objective, and they will be in here so they can contribute a little bit. No, they're not going to be in the ruin, so they can't be targeted, but they're going to be close enough so they can score that objective. Could you even see me deploying that? The answer is no. But I set it up right here, and this is 5 inches, but not within the footprint of the ruin. So they will score points and not be able to be shot at. That is the end of their movement phase. They don't have very much shooting to do either. Actually, we're going to say they are touching. I lied. So they'll be able to shoot. They are once again going to try to shoot at the Onager Dunecrawler for whatever folly that's worth. Now they have +1 to hit. First, we're going to shoot with the call. So it gets 3 shots, hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s. Nice. Then we move on to the wound roll. Strength 5 into toughness 10. Wounding on 6s. But if it's a 6, because it has devastating wounds, it will bypass directly to the hit. Rip, none of them. We now move on to the final guy left, which is the Magna Rail Rifle, which gets 1 shot. It will be hitting on 4s, because it has ballistic skill 5. Oh, a 6. Nice. And then 12 strength into toughness 10, meaning it wounds on a 3, but it is devastating wounds. So if it's a 6, it goes directly to damage. It's a 5 that wounds. It's AP -3. The vehicle does get cover, and it has a 2-up save, meaning it saves on a 4. It's a 3. They don't save. So now we go on to damage roll. It is D3 plus 3 damage. So we roll the dice. It's a 5, so that is 6 damage. That's pretty meaty and chunky. But because it is a 5-up feel no pain, the AdMech player will roll 5 dice, and for every 5 or 6, it ignores 1 point of damage. That is 1. So the Onager Dunecrawler takes 4 points of damage, bringing it down to 7 wounds. We now move on to the shooting phase of the Chthonian Berserks. They will shoot their weapon into the Skitarii Rangers. And I will remember blast this time. So it's D6 plus... Oh, Voltan used black. D6 plus 2 shots. 8 shots. Okay. That's pretty schnasty, as the kids say. This will be hitting on a 4 this time because 8. Yes, I remember. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This will be hitting on a 4 this time because despite them not having direct line of sight, they can see through the ruins. It's a little wacky. I'm not 100% sure how cover works. I'll talk to you guys more about it when you guys come here next. I'll do research on that in the meantime. Boom. Oh, there we go. So these will hit on 4. Because they're shooting the Rangers. So 3 hits, which is about average. We will then wound roll. They will be wounding on a 3 because it is strength 5 going into toughness 3. So no wounds. Rough. So that is the rest of Votan's shooting. We now move on to the charge phase. Chthonian Berserks are going to charge into the Skitarii Rangers. So let us roll the Votan's charge dice. That's a 6. Does that make it? That does make it. So the Votan may get to make their charge. So they're all in, as the kids say. I'm not good. If this is a real game, I would Overwatch, but since the fact this is for demonstration purposes, that's just going to slow us down. So it's now the charge. They made the charge. They are going to... Is there any stratagems they want to use? Let's check. The answer is no. No stratagems. The Chthonian Berserks have the option on their melee weapon. Okay, there's no other charges they want to make. We now move on to the fight phase. When going through the fight phase, normally the enemy goes first, right? But since they charged, they are in a higher priority bracket. They're in the fights first category. If the enemy had a model that had fight first, they would go before the units that charged. But the Admech player doesn't, so this means the Chthonian Berserks, which are the only unit that charged this turn, get to go. I will, at the end of this, have a couple of demos that I'll walk you guys through for fighting, because I and many others have found it a little confusing. So I will go through that with you guys at the end after this little demo. So, the Chthonian Berserks have 2 separate profiles for their heavy plasma axe: strike and sweep. Strike is a lot better, and what I'd be using if the Chthonian Berserks were attacking into the Onager Dunecrawler, due to the fact that it has a higher strength and more AP, right? But less hits. But since there's more guys and how Warhammer's damage works, I will be using, and there's more guys in this, and because of how Warhammer's damage works, I'm going to be using the sweep profile, because it has more attacks, but despite having a lower AP and a lower damage. That's what I wanted. So, there is 4 guys who have heavy plasma axes, and because one of them is the mole grenade launcher guy, which is the big guy, he gets an extra attack, meaning that there is 25 dice that they're going to be rolling. Just give me a second. That's a lot of dice. I might need to mix some colors, which, yeah, we're not racist in this house. We love mixing people for the good of humanity. Hopefully they don't get unlucky. That is 25 dice. If I did my math right, yeah, 25. Let's make sure you can see all the dice, because I don't want to be moving too many more around. There we go. So, yep, 25 dice. Hitting on 3s, no rerolls, nothing fancy like that. Wrong. They're hitting on 4s. because the AdMech in Protective Doctrine gets, when in melee, if they're battle line or within 6 inches of a battle line unit, the enemy has -1 to hit them in melee. So they are hitting on 4s. So let's see which ones hit. Luckily, there's only like 3 3s, so it didn't matter. It would be rough if they're hitting on 2s because there's like a bagillion of those. So we now move on to the wound roll. The sweep has a strength of 4 into toughness 3 models, so they are wounding on 3s. And it only looks like they rolled 1-1. That's pretty good. So AP -1 into the Skitari's save of 4 up. Just double checking that. But they have a 4 up invuln save from the Honor Dune-Crawler. So the Skitari, the AdMech player is saving these on 4s. So it looks like 5 hits went through. So we will eliminate. And they are damage 1. So, there we go. Let's take out 5 AdMech models. We now move into the... We should have done a pile-in move, but they were all in melee. So we are now making a consolidate move where they will get into... Or technically, they're not done yet because we have the concussion gauntlets to do still. So we'll do those right now. They get 4 attacks with these. Hitting on 5s because it's weapon skill 4. 1 hit. Strength 9. So wounding on 2s. Re-rolling because it is twin linked. Wounds. AP 1. Wounding on a 4. Still, or the AdMech player saving on 4s because of their invuln save. That's a save. Nothing happens. Now we go back over here. And we now make a consolidate move. Consolidate is if they are no longer in engagement range, they can move to the, or they can move, if they're not in engagement range, they can move to the nearest enemy or the nearest objective marker. But these guys are still in engagement range, so they get to move up to 3 inches and making base-to-base contact with enemies if they can. So, yep, here we go. Now, it's the AdMech player's turn to fight back. If there are multiple combats engaged, we would do it... I'll demo that later. So, the first set of guys to attack will be the Skitari Rangers. So, where'd that go? They will be wounding on the Alpha Close Combat Weapon. Makes 2 attacks. Hitting on 4s. 2 ones. Nothing. We now move on to the remaining, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, just close combat weapons. Also, one thing that I forgot to do in the command phase was do a battle shock test for those guys. I'm quickly going to retroactively do that now. A battle shock test is you roll 2d6, and if we roll our dice and it is greater than or equal to the, or if it's less than the call's leadership of 7, they will fail and be unable to control objectives. They fail their leadership test, so even though they're positioned here, they are unable to cap that objective for next turn. We now move on to the thing that we were doing before I did that, which was the close combat weapons of the Skitari Rangers. That is 0 hits, once again. We now move on. That is the combat done for... No, I lied. Yeah, now we move on to the engine seer. He gets 3 hits with his Omniscient Axe, and normally during melee you're only allowed to select 1 weapon profile per model. But his other weapon, which is servo arm, has the extra attacks keyword, meaning he gets to attack with both of them. So, 3 hits for the Omniscient Axe. I'll make sure I'll at least stick to it when I can. These hit on 4s, so 2 fails. 1 goes through. Strength 5 into toughness, or strength 6 into toughness 5, meaning it wounds on a 3. So that wounds. And I just want to check. It's specific to shooting. Yeah, that would be funny if it wasn't. AP minus 2 into their 6 up save, so they can't make that. But the Votan player does have a feel no pain of 5 up, so 5s they ignore the damage. No, which means the Admech player, we remove 1 Votan unit. Or 1 Votan model, I should say. We now make the servo arm attack, which there's only 1. That's a 6. That hits. Strength 6 into toughness 5. Wounds on 3. That's a 2. That does not hit. Because the Votan models tagged, that's the term, the Onager Dunecrawler, it wasn't in engagement range, but because of this guy, it now is. The Onager Dunecrawler is going to attack with its funny legs, as the kids say. So, Dunecrawler legs. So it gets 3 attacks, wounding on a 4, or hitting on a 4. It's 2 fails. Strength 6, so wounding on a 3. It's a fail. And I think with that, I have covered pretty much all of the major points. I will end this recording now and record a couple other little demo scenes to go over when there's how it works when multiple fights are going. But other than that, I want to remind you guys that in the future, when we meet next, which is on the 13th, if I recall correctly, make sure that you bring your phone with both the Warhammer 40k official app as well as the Tabletop Battles app. Other than that, if you have any questions, DM me on Discord. You know how to find me. But bring laptop. A laptop is super important for next session. And bring your phone with those 2 apps. And bring your models. If any of your models are damaged or anything, send me a message. I'll get them fixed. I'll print out replacements. If you guys want, I am planning. If you guys don't want this, just tell me and I won't make them for you. But I'm planning on making little strategy guides for your guys' factions. So I'll go over what units you need to keep in mind, what they can do, what things you need to be aware of, and what threats are on the enemy combat patrols, such as, for a quick example, if I was making the Votan one, I would say one model that you need to be very careful with is this guy specifically, because he has the Magna Coil Big Gun, whatever it's called, and it's pretty much that army's only anti-tank. So that's the only thing that can really do damage to this guy. So if shooting at him for 1 or 2 more turns, if you're able to pick off the engines here, right? give these guys another round or two of combat, and they would eventually chew through them, right? Despite how it looks, and I know for some people, Dennis, they are very. He is at least. I'm sorry, I'm wailing on you, Dennis, but this is a win. This is not the best position for the Votann, but it's definitely winnable. If the Votann player got a couple of lucky shots with the Magna coil gun from his guys in the back, and gets some good melee with his Chthonians, it is 100% winnable because the tank isn't super mobile, and the Admech player's destroyers are all the way in the back. Yeah, I don't think there's much else. I've been rambling for a little bit now. After this, you'll see a couple of scenarios going over combats. I'll talk about stratagems a bit and unit abilities. I hope this doesn't take me too long to edit and get to you guys. I should have said this in the beginning, but please ignore the sound under my fan's mic, because I only have the only mic that works and that doesn't crash my laptop is the one on my laptop, and it's right by the fan, so I try to alleviate the noise as much as possible, but it's not the easiest to do. Yeah, so I will think up some scenarios and record them and put them right here. Okay, gamers, I'm back. I'm going to quickly cover a couple of things I didn't get to cover in the battle that we had. So, one thing that I think is really important that I didn't cover is the fighting, like how the fight phase works. I only got to demonstrate one charge in combat, so I'm going to set something up. We will have the Admech Rangers here. We will have the Leagues of Votann. I'll try to make the Votann use my 3D printed resin and the Admech using plastic and the Being Workshop plastic, though I might not in some scenarios. We'll have these guys here, and then we'll have the Onager Dunecrawler here. So, in this scenario, these guys are already locked in combat. Okay? And they've been in combat for, they did not charge this turn. Their engagement range, which is when they are within less than 1 inch of an enemy. These guys have not. This turn, the Chthonian Berserks charge the Onager Dunecrawler. So the order of who gets to attack this turn will be whoever charged, so the Chthonian Berserks, then one of these two units by the Admech player's choosing, and then this unit of Hearthguard, and then the other Admech unit. So for example, it would play out something like this. This unit attacks the Onager. Then the Skitarii attack the Hearthkin. And then the Hearthkin attack the Skitarii. And then the Onager attacks the Chthonians. Yeah, another example of this could be attacks. Sounds like saying it was attacks, not attacks. Yeah, I don't know. So, yeah. But now we move on to the second turn. Now it is a new combat round started. None of them have charged or have a fight first or fight last ability. Now, it's still, we're pretending like it was the Votann's turn to charge. It's now back to the Votann's next turn in their fight phase again. So you start with the opposing player, so a person who's not in this case, not the Votan. So this would mean the AdMech player gets to choose which unit they want to fight with first. They're saying they want to fight with their Onager Dunecrawler first. Pew! Then the Votan will get to choose whether that be the Chthonian Berserks or the Hearthguard. The Hearthguard decide to attack. Pew! AdMech gets to choose its next ongoing combat, which the only one it has to choose is these guys. Pew! Votan choose their next unit, and they choose these guys to fight. Pew! Okay, hope that makes sense. The next thing we're going to cover is also in relation to combat. It is how many units can attack and how some of the more fine details of this works. Actually, I'm going to not attack with their melee unit, just I'm going to attack with these guys because actually I'm going to attack with, do I have any guys on solid bases? Because the clear ones are a little difficult to see. I just needed to grab some more models. As you can see, I just wanted some things that didn't have clear bases. It's kind of hard to see on the camera. I also want to try to keep the different colors to make it more easily to see. So this unit of Sidonian Dragoons is planning on attacking the Onager Dunecrawler. When seeing who is eligible, so let's say they just charged and they're now like this. I could do this with Votan, but I have these guys. They're easy to move like this. The first step you do is your pylon, which you move models up to 3 inches so they're as close as they can be to it. Ideally, if they can be touching base to base, they have to. So yeah, if they're here, we measure roughly 3 inches from the front of their base. So it looks like these two guys can get in base to base, but this guy can't. So they end up like this. Right? Now, so yeah, the next step would be doing the fighting and then consolidate. If you aren't in base to base, you get to move another up to 3 inches towards the closest enemy. So this guy could move into here like this. So now, in the fight phase, how do you determine eligibility? I'm going to set up a kind of weird scenario that would probably never happen in game. But it's always really funny to look, because this is technically valid. Okay, who is eligible to fight in this scenario? The answer is anyone who is in base-to-base contact with the enemy, so here, or is in base-to-base contact with an ally who is in base-to-base, or is within engagement range. What that means is this guy is able to attack, this guy is able to attack, but this guy isn't. This is because this guy's in base to base, it's touching here, I can't move him any forward. This guy is in base to base with this guy, and he's in base to base, but this guy isn't in base to base with someone who's in base to base. If he was here, he'd be able to attack. If he was here, even though he's not in base to base, he is within that 1 inch of engagement range. Okay, the next, and at least from what I can... oh yeah, never mind. There's a couple things I'll talk about afterwards. We're going to quickly... the final thing, part of the combat phase that we're going to quickly talk about is shooting into and outside of combat. So we are going to have the Votan player get back in here, because bases aren't nearly as important for this one, so I'm going back to something that makes sense lore-wise. And just to make the names a bit easier to stuff that you recognize. These guys are in combat, so are these guys. And then I've got these guys here. These are Skitarii Vanguard. They're a slightly different version of Skitarii Rangers. Yeah, so in this scenario, we have our... so, in this scenario, who can shoot who? This is, something you definitely need to consider. So, to answer that, the general rule of thumb is that you cannot shoot somebody who is in engagement range, period. Right? For example, this unit of Skitarii Vanguard would be unable to shoot at this unit of Chthonian Berserks because their ally, a unit they're allied with, which is the Rangers, is in engagement range with the Chthonian Berserks. But because the Onager Dunecrawler has the vehicle keyword, which means it's a vehicle, like it's a tank, it is able to be shot at, but with a -1 to hit. So Skitarii Vanguard have a native 4 to hit. This would mean, assuming there's no other external buffs to their hit roll or ballistic skill, they would be hitting on a 5 because they are shooting into combat. And they can only shoot into this combat because it is a vehicle. If our Tech Priest Engine Seer was also engaged in combat, they would not be allowed to shoot. Additionally, neither the Skitarii Rangers would be unable to shoot at, let's grab another Leagues of Votann unit that's not a vehicle. The Skitarii Rangers would be unable to shoot this unit, right? Because they are locked in combat. Unless if one of the weapons, such as the Skitarii Alpha's Mechanicus pistol, if your weapon has the pistol keyword, you are able to fire it in close combat. Thus, but only in the enemy that you're engaged with. So for example, this guy has a Mechanicus pistol. And if he was here, he would be able to shoot at this Leagues of Votann unit, but not this one. Or if he was engaged here, he could only shoot these ones. Additionally, the rule is called Big Guns Never Tire. That's the rule that allows people that are in melee range with a vehicle to be shot at. Applies both ways. So this unit of Hernkin Pioneers would be able to shoot at the Onager Dunecrawler, even though it's an engagement range. They also receive the -1 penalty. Another thing that changes how you can shoot and be shot at in engagement range is the blast keyword on weapons. This is pretty niche and a little deceiving, as it makes you think that you can normally shoot into infantry that's in combat, but you can't. The keyword states for every 5 models in an enemy unit that you're shooting at, you gain 1 additional hit, but you can't shoot into combat. E.g., you couldn't shoot into this. So for example, if let's pretend that these guys had a blast weapon. Even though, and only one of them was, let's pretend this guy's big gun, right? See that? Let's pretend that was like a rocket launcher or something, and it had blast. Even though the rest of their weapons could fire into this squad, they are unable to fire that, or into this guy. They're unable to fire that rocket because it has the blast keyword and they are in melee with this guy. So the blast keyword is often as much of a benefit as it is a penalty for vehicles. And that goes the same way. The Onager Dunecrawler could fire into these guys. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about that rule. With Big Guns Never Tire, a vehicle can shoot out of combat as well. Right? So this guy could shoot at these guys with that -1 to hit. And it's able to fire into its own combat, I'm pretty sure. So I'm pretty sure it could fire into these guys. I'm like 70% sure of that. I'll put something on the screen if I'm wrong. But yeah, so that's most of those rules. So yeah, if these guys had a blast weapon, couldn't shoot the tank with it because these guys are here, and vice versa. If these guys had a blast weapon, they couldn't shoot these guys because it's a blast weapon and they don't want to hurt their friends, I guess. So yeah, I'm going to talk about how cover works because it is pretty confusing. Okay, so let's quickly talk about how cover works. Let's pretend this is like a ruin or a wall or something. They are and they're not. Neither of them are part of it. I'll actually talk about that in a minute. So currently these guys are so cover works like this. If you are able to draw a 1 millimeter thick line from your model to a part of an enemy model, you're able to shoot with that one. Excuse me. So, for example, neither side is able to shoot at each other because neither of them have line of sight. But let us say we had something like this, and then we had all of these guys right here. So, trying to make it so with this configuration, the only one they're able to see is the call. So yeah, despite me maybe it not being yeah, that's about right. So with this configuration, the only one that in something like this, during the Votan's shooting phase, the only model that, because it's a model to unit basis, which is a little weird, but we just give it a minute. So the only model that will be able to attack so let's say it's the Votan's shooting phase. The only model that they have that can draw a 1 millimeter thick line. The holes in this don't count because if you know they're hollow. It's kind of hard to see on that one, but like they're hollow and you can see through them. I'm not counting. I'm pretending they're solid. The only model in the Votan unit that can draw a 1 millimeter thick line to the enemy unit is the call, right? All the other ones are blocked by the wall. But every model in the AdMech unit, the Rangers, is able to draw a 1 millimeter line to the call, right? And so on and so forth. That means the call's unit will get the benefit of cover, but they are able to damage everyone there. So let's say they rolled fantastic and dealt like 5 or 6 wounds. And they could take off, like, I don't know, no, you wouldn't take off the call, but you could take out all these back guys. Like, yeah, let's say they dealt 5 wounds of damage, or 6. They could take off all these back guys, despite them not being the ones that were able to be targeted, right? Yeah, and this goes both ways. If let's say in a more realistic scenario where we had like a couple of these guys out here like this, or let's say, yeah, something like this happens, and then some of the AdMech guys are behind a wall, and then the Onager Dunecrawler's right here. So let's say this is a slightly more realistic scenario, despite I think they might be in engagement range, but don't tell anyone. In this scenario, only a couple of the AdMech models would be able to shoot. If we kind of almost cut a line, it only really looks like these 6. These 6 from this unit will be able to shoot at this unit. So they do their shooting, and let's say, and the Onager Dunecrawler will be able to shoot. I'm also going to push these guys back for an effect. Let's say the Votan player thinking, I'll be able to make sure that they can't be shot at. They could take off these models, and now the Onager Dunecrawler is or let's say they killed 6 somehow. They went 1 for 1. They had some pretty good shots. They have a good gamer chair. The Omega Dunecrawler is now no longer able to target them because the models that they could have targeted are now dead. That makes sense. One more thing I'm going to talk about in shooting, I think, is how ruins work, because they're pretty finicky is the best way to describe it. So I'm going to take out a game card. You don't need to know what's on it, but it will just provide a base for that will function as a ruin. Yeah, something like this. This isn't quite perfect, but it's not bad. So, yeah, ruins are really the only piece of terrain you need to be familiar with. There's a couple others, like pipes and big blocks. Like something that would be a big block would be something like this. And it just functions as you would guess, like a big block. It blocks on a site. If it has a flat top, you can crawl on top of it. There's no super special rules that go with it. It's ruins that get really weird. That's why I'm going over them specifically. So yeah, and this white border is the ruin outline. So let's say we have an example where we have our Skitarii Rangers right here, and I'm going to move these guys more off screen, and we have our Leagues of Votann, Hearthkin Warriors. If this ruin wasn't here, and these were just like, I don't know, boxes, they would be able to shoot each other. But because neither side is in the ruin, this functions like a big box, right? You know, fully obscuring sight. You can pretend like there's rubble or like, I don't know, gantry chains. We then move. Now, let us say during the AdMech player's turn, they move their unit inside the ruin. Now, the AdMech player is able to shoot out of the ruin, and the Votann are able to shoot in. These guys aren't touching. I'm gonna make sure of that. So, but now line of sight rules apply as normal. For example, these 2 Rangers in here would be unable to shoot the Votann as they're unable to make a line of sight. And the Votann, because of that, would receive cover. But let's say the AdMech player moved to here. Oh. And all of their units were able to shoot at the Votann. The Votann would not receive the benefits of cover, but the AdMech player would, because they're part of the ruin. If they were both inside the ruin, let's say the only one who was there was the call because there's not quite enough room, it would function as normal, right? An additional thing to note is if we pretend let's say the Votann was here, or just the call, because the whole unit's kind of hard to move. Due to the fact the call has the infantry keyword, it is able to like phase through this wall. It's like climbing through a hole in a window or something. Final thing I want to talk about is going to be unit coherency. There is and I'll also quickly go, I only touched Battle Shock lightly in the video, so I'm going to quickly cover that again. So, there's 2 different types of unit coherency you need to be familiar with. Larger units, such as this 10-man unit of Skitarii Rangers, or smaller unit cohesion, such as this 5-man unit of Cataphren Destroyers, or Breachers Cataphrons. We will start with the easier one, which is Cataphren Destroyer, or small unit cohesion. To be in unit cohesion, your models must be within 2 inches. 2 inches. 1 inch is from a path. It was from like 9th, maybe 8th. So, your models must be in a small, I'm going to move these off to the side for a minute. Your models must be within 1 inch of one other model in that unit to be, or within 2 inches of another model to be in unit cohesion. So let us say we had, so something like this is a legal way to arrange them. Or in a more extreme scenario, as long as, it's not the easiest to see, but as long as each model's base is within 2 inches of another, you can chain them out quite far. This is a legal way that they could be positioned in-game as, and one thing, they all need to be connected. Because technically, by the rules I had just stated, this is a legal unit cohesion. It's not, but because they all need to be connected, you need to be able to draw a big chain line between them all, if that makes sense. E.g., something like this. Yeah, and as long as they're all within 2 inches of each other, that's legal. It gets slightly more complicated when you move into units that have above 5 models. It's the same for if a unit has 20 models, which I think the largest unit is 20 models. I think like orcs, and I think Kobe's Zangors can get up to 20 if you field them in certain ways. Small unit cohesion, every model needs to be within 2 inches of another model. So like this is unit cohesion, obviously, but I usually find spreading them out to their max demonstrates it the best. That's why I did it later. And obviously, actually I'll cover that in a minute. And it's still 2 inches for these ones as well. Okay, so this is a legal position for a 10-man unit to be in. As they are all within at least 2 inches of 2 other models, right? You can make these bulbous ends at the end so they're in a triangle. So this guy's next to these 2, this guy's next to these 3, technically, he's special, and so on and so forth. Though, okay, and then the same rules apply to them, as long as if your unit breaks unit cohesion, you must remove models until it is now in unit cohesion. For example, if this guy at the end dies for whatever reason, this guy is no longer in unit cohesion. Then this guy, 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 all the way down to these 3 models. And all of those die because one guy died. But now, hypothetically, let's say, for other reasons, one of these guys die. Does the rest of your unit just perish because they're no longer in unit cohesion? No. If your unit doesn't have enough models, you go down in brackets, right? It's kind of like how taxes work, but in reverse. Actually, it wouldn't have died when, like this, because now it only has 5 models. It now moves down to 5 model unit cohesion rules. Thus, you only need to be within range of 1. So, like this, it's fine. And then, when these guys die, there's 2-man unit cohesions the same as 1, but if one guy dies, this guy's not going to die immediately. So yeah, that is the rules for unit cohesion. Battle shock, yeah. So, I didn't really cover a ton of stuff about battle shock. I really should have, but, so, battle shock happens in primarily one way. There's pretty much 2 ways to get battle shocked. Either A, you lose 50% of your unit's starting strength, or B, your opponent has a rule to battle shock. You or your opponent has a rule to battle shock your unit. 2 things happen when a unit, actually, okay. Yeah, so let's say in this scenario, we lose 50% of our starting strength. That is either one of two things. If your unit only has one model, it is half of its wounds. So, for example, the Onager Dunecrawler. If it has 11 wounds. Thus, if it goes below 6 wounds, it would need to take a battle shock test. Or in this unit of Skitarii Rangers, if it lost 5 models, it would need to undergo a battle shock test. Or if the opponent had a rule saying, this command stratagem says, deal a bit of damage and give a battle shock test, they would have to take one. What being battle shocked does is it does two things. It makes your objective control score fall to 0, which I should have talked about before this, but I'll talk about it in a minute now that I remember. And it makes you unable to use stratagems on them. So if you have something that lets you reroll a dice, like a command point reroll, that's a basic stratagem. You could not do that one. When you take a battle shock test, though, your unit doesn't become battle shocked when losing 50% of its models. It needs to make a battle shock test. So if, for example, this unit of Skitarii were to take a battle shock test, also they have their engines here attached. The character models don't affect when they get battle shocked, though they still get battle shocked with the rest of them. So, if you roll to be battle shocked, you need to roll below the best leadership score in the unit. So, for example, the best leadership score in the unit is this Tech Priest Enginseer's leadership characteristic of 7. So we roll 2 dice, and in this scenario, we pass. That means we're not battle shocked, nothing happens. But let's say this was instead a 1. The unit would become battle shocked. That means they have an OC of 0, or objective control score of 0, and you couldn't use stratagems on them, and they would become battle shocked. Certain armies gain benefits if a unit is battle shocked. Okay, the final thing I think that I'm going to go over in this quick video is, these are objectives. I didn't say that in the video. Only Dennis will know that, but I hope it was obvious. So, is objectives. You score an objective if you are within, I think it's 3, I might have lied in the video. Yeah, I lied about this in the video. It's not, objective marker range is not 5 inches, it's 3 inches. So, when capturing objectives, there's 2 things. So yeah, an objective is within, to control an objective, you need to be within 3 inches of it. Ooh, there we go. Try to make sure the glare is not too bad. So, here's how it works. To score an objective, you need to have at least 1 OC on it. OC stands for objective control. So, let us say our Tech Priest Enginseer is on this objective. The AdMech player has 1 OC on it. But the Leagues of Votan and the Leagues of Votan player has 0. Let us now say the Leagues of Votan player, their call on there, who also has OC of 1. This would mean that they are tied and neither scores the objective, right? It's a contested objective. Now, let us say that there are 2 Chthonian Berserks on the objective. And they each have an objective score of 1. They now overrule the Tech Priest with only an OC score of 1. But now, let's say instead, there were 3 Chthonian Berserks and 2 Skitarii Rangers. You would think, based off of the previous 2 examples, the Chthonian Berserks would win, but the Skitarii Rangers have an OC score of 2, meaning, while the Chthonian Berserks only have an OC score of 1. This means that the AdMech player has 4 points worth of objective control on this marker, and the Leagues of Votann player has 3, meaning this objective is held by the AdMech player. But it is still contested, right? Certain things such as the Raised Earth mission pack or Raised Earth mission will say you need to control an uncontested objective. That would mean the Votann player would have to have 0 score on it. Okay. But now let's say this was a full unit at the start of the turn. It's now the AdMech player's command phase, and they roll for Battle Shock, and whoa, it fails. Despite this would set both these models to an OC score of 0, meaning the Votann player would have 3 on it, and the AdMech player would have 0. And yeah, and if there was an Engine Seer not attached, the AdMech player would have 1, 0, because these guys are battle shocked, and then the Votann would have 3. The Votann would still control. And I think that is the final thing. I almost forgot a couple of things that some of you guys have. Dennis specifically has a dedicated transport. Yeah, one thing I wasn't able to cover since neither of the armies 2 things I wasn't able to cover was deep striking, which actually I was because the Votann's leader has a teleport crest, but I didn't realize until after I filmed. And transports, because neither of the armies in this had it. This is a Scorpius Dune Rider, which is AdMech's dedicated transport unit. All you really need to know about it is that it can hold dudes. Nothing too else fancy about it. Oh, there we go. So, yeah, let's quickly go over this. So, this unit, this dedicated transport, is holding this entire 11 model AdMech unit. It has a transport capacity of 12. It cannot hold models with the Cataphron or Taraxi keyword. So, and they have to have infantry. So these guys are all in here. Oftentimes, you take either the character model or one of the models in that unit and just kind of put it in or on top of the transport, right? Like I just did with that Engine Seer, just so you remember it has stuff in it and you don't get it mixed up if you have multiple of the same transport, which you can have up to 3 of one model. I'll talk about that in the list building thing when you guys come over. When units, so we'll just pretend there's just this one guy in here just to make it easy for us. So currently they are not, this guy's unit, which for now is just himself, is not in there. When in your movement phase, you may embark in a transport, so you go inside. You may not embark and disembark on the same turn. And then the transport is allowed to move, or vice versa. This guy could be here, the transport can move, and then he can hop in. When disembarking, so he's already in, if the transport moves, you can get out. You are not allowed to shoot or you're not allowed to charge or move during your turn. That unit is ineligible to do either. Unless the vehicle has the assault ramp keyword, which despite this literally having a ramp, this one doesn't. But if the vehicle hasn't moved this turn, you are able to get out. He's going to go down the ramp because he's cool. You're able to get out, move, and then charge a unit if you wanted to. When disembarking, all units, all models in your unit must be within 3 inches. I'm pretty sure it's 3 inches. I'll put up on screen if I'm wrong. Must be wholly. Wholly means like every part of them, every part of their base. If it's not, and most things are based. We'll put this up because technically it's not supposed to. Lost part of it. That's fine. All units must be wholly within 3 inches of the transport when disembarking. If they're unable to be wholly within 3 inches of the transport when disembarking, they can't disembark. The unit just can't. And they can't be in engagement range of the enemy. That's another thing. And then the rest of the rules apply. These guys are able to, since this didn't move, they're able to charge and move as they please. But let's say, I realize I've done this as models who do have a dedicated, but I'm lazy and this guy's cool. Let's say these guys are back inside again, and the transport gets destroyed. This guy, he's got a really big gun, let's say, and the transport gets destroyed. You leave the transport there, and you enact a everyone get out move. So all of your models, you follow the same rules for disembarking as you normally would. Not within engagement range, has to. If your models are unable to fulfill it, let's say there's a bunch of enemies around here, and you couldn't not put them in a place where they would be in engagement range, they are just destroyed, flat out. Now, for each model in the unit, you would roll a d6. On the result of a 1, that model is destroyed. So, roughly a sixth of the guys in your transport will die upon exiting a vehicle that has died. And then that unit will also needs to take a battle shock test. Yeah. The final thing I want to cover, I covered very briefly in the video, was deep strikes and stuff from reserves. I'll grab my one unit that can actually no, I'll keep it with you guys are familiar. Yeah. As I learned actually recently, this guy is equipped with a teleportation crest, which means his unit or whoever he's attached to has the deep strike keyword. And the Hernkin Pioneers are often units that go into reserve. So I will be talking about how those work and how those are different. So, for when we're playing Combat Patrol, you are unable to declare someone is in reserve if they don't have the Deep Strike keyword. That's because declaring someone's in reserve means it's based off of how much of your army you can put in reserve is based off of how many points they are. So you're allowed to put 1/4 of your army's points into reserve. So if you're playing at 1,000 points, you can put 250 points of your army in reserve. This rule doesn't apply for models or units with the deep strike keyword, such as the Call. These guys kind of bypass that point rule, and so they bypass it in the game, in our Combat Patrol. So, and these guys have a rule to go into reserves. So they're the really only ones who will be playing with normal reserve rules. So I'm going to talk about that right now. Let's get an enemy model, our Tech Priest. So, you guys can't well see it, but here's board edge, right here. When coming in, we're not talking about Deep Strike right now. When coming in from reserve, there's 2 things you need to do. You need to be, when bringing in a model from reserve, or unit, I should say, from reserve, you need to fulfill 2 qualities, or 2 checkboxes. Where did my tape measure go? There. You need to be within 6 inches of the board's edge. So, anywhere like this. I'm going to move this back so it's nice and square again. Anywhere like this. Move this guy a little farther away. Anywhere in this area. So roughly behind this line, because here is board edge. You can see it on my finger. So, and the second thing is you need to be greater than 9 inches from every enemy unit. Some you might need to be as far as 12 if they have special rules about that. So you can't be within 9 inches of this guy, so anywhere in this zone. Meaning the Hernkin Pioneers can get into like this area, in this area. So they decide to deploy right here. After deep striking, you are unable to move. So they couldn't use their 12 inches of movement to get like right there. They're not able to do that. But you are making sure this is 9 inches, which it isn't. So these guys are going to have to move back a little bit. You are allowed to declare a charge. So you would roll your dice, and in the scenario, by definition, this is a 9-inch charge. Even if it measures to be like 9.5, by definition, if you say, I'm putting them in 9 inches, it will be a makeable charge, as long as you can fit them in a way that would, yeah, you get my point. You can come in from reserves and charge in the same turn. When deep striking a unit, it is very similar, with one very important exception. There's one fewer. Also, when units are coming in from reserve, you can't do it in your enemy's deployment zone. So let's say this was the AdMech player's deployment zone. They wouldn't be able to go here, because this is their deployment zone. They would be able to go over here, though, because this isn't. As long as they follow the same things. Within 6 inches and greater than 9 inches away from the enemy model. When deep striking, you only follow one rule of those 3 that's for reserves. You only need to be greater than 9 inches away from the enemy. So here is legal, because they're within 6 inches of board edge. Or no, they don't need to be. They are greater than 9 inches away from the enemy. I'm pretty sure about you can deep strike in your opponent's deployment zone. I'll double check that. If I do, I'll put it up on screen, tell you if I'm lying or not. And like they could, if something like this, even though they're very far away from any board edge, off in that direction, they're able to deep strike here. And that would go for the entire unit of Hearthkin, because they were attached. Only one model in the unit needs to have the keyword to do that, not the entire unit. And I think that's it. Remember what I said slightly earlier in the video? I have to edit this now, but remember to bring the things I told you about for our next meeting. I can't wait. We're going to have so much fun. I know I am. I hope you guys do too. This might not be the end if I think about something I need to add later. Other than that, I think we're good. Bye-bye.